Dwayne. How are you?
I am well. How's yourself?
I'm great. Just got up here a while ago, went for a little bit of a run and a stretch, and yeah, just enjoying the morning. How about yourself?
Yeah, same. I didn't get outside yet. I just did some light workout in my living room, a little bit of qigong.
Okay. A little bit of what,
I've been
sorry?
doing qigong.
What is that? Qigong.
It's a form of martial arts where it balances energy and it's kind of movement and energy. It's kind of a moving yoga kind of thing, but it's a little more energy focused.
Okay. What kind of culture is that from? I've never heard of it.
It's mainly from the Oriental. They do a
Okay.
lot of it. It's very similar to Tai Chi, only it's a little bit more moving energy focus. But it would be like a close cousin to Tai Chi if you know about Tai Chi.
I see. Do you usually do that in the morning? Is that like a common thing for you?
Yeah, I took a workshop on it before, and actually since COVID, I've had a little bit more time, so I've been finding a few different qigong kinds of practices and playing with a few different ones and adding it into my morning routine lately. So last couple of weeks, I've been doing a lot more. Yeah, it's been great.
That's good. That's good. I was gonna ask, what else do you do for a morning routine? I know we kind of wanted to talk about today was mental health, and I know you kind of work in that field. And what kind of things do you do to keep yourself going throughout the day and to start your day, I guess?
Well, from some of the different trainings I've taken and what I found works for me is how you start your day is really key. So
Mm-hmm.
I picked up a routine from a guy. Gee, I've studied so many, I can't even remember which guy it was to give him the credit, but he called it the 20-20-20 rule. And that's how I start my morning. So it's 20 minutes of movement and then 20 minutes of kind of meditation, learning kinds of practice.
Okay.
And I kind of combine that with 20 minutes of just doing some uplifting of my mind, my emotions, and my spirit. Either some reading or some meditating or learning, watching a YouTube video
Mm-hmm.
that I'm interested in, that kind of stuff. But the key for me is, in fact, I'm combining the movement stuff with it. So I'll put my headphones on and
Okay.
listen to maybe some music, some affirmations, but the key thing is getting the mind and the body moving together for me. So in fact, when I first started 20-20-20, to take a whole hour in the morning before COVID was too much time.
Right.
So I broke it down into actually in the beginning, I was like 5-5-5.
Wow. It's still something, right? It's all it just you're just getting, like you said, the body, the mind, and kind of maybe the spirit, you could say, all going at once.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's been a key for sure. And even working in this field, I found sometimes getting a routine practice myself was sometimes to get into that rhythm and that routine was a little bit difficult. Oh, life's busy, or I woke up late, or I got to get to work or do that.
Yeah.
So what I did is I made it the ridiculously simple. When I first started my physical routine in the morning, I actually learned from Mr. Millman is his name. Dan Millman, Way of the Peaceful Warrior is one of his favorite books that I read, and I actually went and did some training with him in California. He calls it the 3-minute Peaceful Warrior workout. And that's where I learned and started my morning routine, and that's how I start my day. Now I've modified it from them and brought in a few different movements for myself and things I enjoy. But even on those days when I wake up and I'm hurried and I'm struggling, I
Mm-hmm.
start my day with, I can at least do 3 minutes. Then I can play the mental game and, I don't have time to, warm up.
Just
Oh, wait a
3 minutes.
minute, I could do 3 minutes. That's ridiculously easy. So it helps me to,
Yeah.
and I learned that it helps others to just get it to that ridiculously simple, and it helps you do the mind game. Okay, I can do 3 minutes. And then once you get used to it, your body and brain start making time for a little bit more because it's so
Because
healthy
yeah,
and
because you
easy to
started
enjoy.
enjoying it. Yeah, we almost got to
Exactly.
trick ourselves into doing small amount of things to start, because our brains, anything that's too much, we'll just like completely ignore, and we'll probably not do it.
Yeah, and that's exactly a key to making changes, Andrew, is make it easy, accessible, and doable, and make it, so that your mind can get in, and your mind and your body and brain can get into that routine of a habit of some kind, a healthy habit, right?
For sure. Would you mind, just for people who are watching, Dwayne, just give a brief introduction on yourself, what kind of work you do, um, yeah, and yeah, what kind of work you do, and what you're doing right now, I guess.
Sure. Well, I've been in the addictions recovery field for working as a professional for over 30 years. So I took a diploma training in specifically with addictions counseling and education and in substance misuse and abuse and those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. And then finished a degree later on in clinical counseling. It's actually a BA in humanities with a focus on clinical counseling. So I've done a lot of individual counseling as well as training folks specifically with recovery for the first 20 years who have, struggling with a substance abuse issue, but then moved into more general mental health, because lots of times when there's a substance abuse, there's things like depression and anxiety, and they all
Right.
come in a package, and to separate them out is too difficult. So I really started doing more broader individual counseling as well as training groups. I found that, the general public needed,
Mm-hmm.
effective tools and ways. So the last 5 years, especially, I've been doing more training, not just for people in recovery or mental health concerns that wanted to learn more practical ways to help themselves and empower themselves, but doing a lot more with employers on the job. I'm with a consulting group. There's 3 of us, and we do everything from, safety, fitness for duty training kinds of things for supervisors through to alcohol, drug education, those kinds of things, as well as motivational interviewing is one of the areas. So I'm doing a lot more training these last
Mm-hmm.
5 years. And then I just took the leap, actually, February 1st. Most of those positions were kind of part-time in private practice, but full-time working for the health authority and in various capacities over the years. But in February 1st, I actually went totally 100% self-employed, and have
Mm-hmm.
been really working on building my business to do counseling, consulting, and training, especially in the holistic area of mental health, substance misuse, and specifically with employers is one of our areas of focus with our consulting group. So, and then COVID happened, so now I'm learning how to do this online.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say it probably shifted your business a lot because you're probably meeting one-on-one with people and whatnot, and now it's these people still need the same help, and you have to change the way we're reaching out to people.
For sure, yeah. The big shift for me is figuring out how to transfer some of the information onto an online training format where you can. It's not just a webinar, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the stuff we're doing practical skill development. So it's one thing to read or listen to a webinar, and that's all great. But how do you help people then apply it, discuss it, interact? And so there's some ways, as you know, that we can do that. But it's a huge learning curve on how do you do that through an interactive video component, right?
Yeah, I guess I mean the power of one-on-one conversation will probably always be the number one thing. I think talking to someone and relaying what they're saying and being one-on-one with someone is probably the most powerful, I think.
For sure. But one of the things that surprised me in the last year, especially, is one of the pieces I do is if somebody, fails a drug screen with a safety sensitive work environment, they go and get assessed and, they don't have a problem, but they just need a little bit of education around the substance of misuse to make
Mm-hmm.
sure they're, not putting themselves and others at risk in a safety sensitive work environment. So I would do the education session. Oftentimes they're suggested they have 2 hours of one-on-one education with me, specific to that drug and specific to safety sensitive. And so some of them were in Alberta. They don't have a lot of folks that are doing this specific area in private practice. So I started doing video conference one-on-one calls with this education area about a year ago. And I was really quite surprised at the level of engagement when you add that video component where folks can actually see your facial
Mm-hmm.
expression and interact. And in fact, there was a few of them that turned into counseling sessions. It was supposed to be just a pure education session, but they had some
Right.
personal things going on, and they were able to gain that trust and rapport just through the video call. So there's really often an opportunity there that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize was as available through a video conference call, and was more successful, and kind of surprised me actually than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think it's like the ease of access for people. They can be in the comfort of their own home. They don't have to go out, um, put themselves out into public or whatever, and they can talk about their problems in a personal space that they're comfortable in, right? And I think
Yeah,
it's just the ease of access, which is good because there is still the stigma of people that need mental health or need mental health help and whatnot. So I feel like
yeah,
if people can access that easily and discreetly and anonymously, that's super helpful for people. Another
yeah,
thing that I
for
kind of
sure.
wanted to touch on was I know you were saying that you're trying to help more of the general public with with things. And I think that's important because I think our misconceptions about mental health is that it's either you have mental health issues or you don't. And I believe that it's more of a spectrum than anything, right? I feel like
Yeah.
during different times of people's lives, we're going to go through moments where we'll need help. We'll need people like you perhaps to talk to discuss things, professionals that know what people are going through and know how to help each other through those kind of problems.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Andrew. We call it in our professional language as a continuum, right? We all have, in fact, the reframe language you're using these days is mental wellness, and I really like that concept. We all need mental wellness, and it tends to destigmatize it a little bit more. I mean, we all have ups and downs of life, right? And there's times when you got an issue or things that we're struggling with a little bit more, and we need a little bit more support or professional guidance in our mental wellness. And when I say mental wellness, I come at it from a holistic approach. So it's body, mind, spirit.
For sure.
Because that's part of who we are, right? And as I get to know a person, then we target in on which areas are going to have the most impact for them. But we're all having ups and downs of our mental wellness and different things that we use to cope and to keep life in balance as we navigate life.
Yeah, I actually wanted to share some of these slides here with you, Dwayne. And
sure.
I've been doing this with my podcast here, just to kind of get us thinking in different ways, and whoever's watching can kind of look at these things too and think.
I'll read this out. Mental pain is less traumatic than physical pain, but it is more common and also more hard to bear. The frequent attempt to conceal mental pain increases the burden. It is easier to say my tooth is aching than to say my heart is broken.
Yeah, that would be for sure. Yeah, and because we're conditioned really to not talk about those things of the heart, and sometimes that's a wise decision. You want to talk about those things that are a little bit more personal with someone you trust. You need that element of trust, whether it's with a good friend, or a good friend can help support us through lots of things, but sometimes they don't have some of that extra training and professional expertise. So sometimes we need a little bit more support, guidance in a safe, trusting environment to talk about what's really going on. And that's part of what drives the stigma, is people think, well, geez, what's wrong with me? I better not talk about this. They'll think I'm crazy or something.
Well, I think that's the problem, man. That's the problem. Most people are like, if you have any sort of anxiety, depression issues, like it's very easy to think that you have a problem that only you are facing and you are crazy and you don't want other people to think that, right? So it's very easy to kind of hide these emotions, which I think are common to the human experience. Everyone will have a period of anxiety, of a depression, of some sort of ailment in their life, I believe. Whether it be debilitating or whether it just be kind of like an inconvenience. It'll be on a spectrum. But I believe everyone will go through it.
For sure. And if it's on a spectrum and it's on the lower end, lots of us have learned strategies along the way that help us to manage, handle it, come through it. And sometimes we get hit with a real wave, that I remember when I was exactly. I remember my first grief. I was 19 years old when I lost my best friend. We were in a boating accident together, and he died and I lived. And I truly thought I was going crazy. Nobody talked to me about what a wave of grief was like and the stages. And so I tried to, suck it up and be a man. And as I was conditioned, and you don't talk about those feelings. You just, you go to the funeral and then you get on with life. But that wasn't happening. I literally thought I was going crazy. And I spent a little bit of time with a counselor who helped me understand the grief process, and these feelings were common, and added a few more tools and ways to manage the waves of grief. And I came through it, and that became a foundation of my life experience. I've struggled around, and all my substance abuse went crazy for a year or two before I finally got off the alcohol and met a counselor that helped me understand that grief process a little bit better, and that I wasn't crazy. That's what grief does, and it hits different people in waves. And here's some ways to navigate through those waves of very extreme emotions that nobody taught me how to do that before.
Hmm. Did you find that experience made you want to get into this field and made you want to help other people kind of understand their grief, understand their life issues?
For sure, yeah, that was a driving force for me. I mean, having my own substance abuse issues and some grief stuff, and I went through some bullying stuff as a teenager, especially. And when I started getting my life back on track, I found that I really enjoyed helping others. So therefore, from that life experience, went back to school and got some extra education and training to do what I really enjoy doing. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I kind of feel the same way a lot of times. It's like, you go through these issues and like you just want to, I think naturally you just want to help people because other people struggle with these things and sometimes just need like a word of encouragement or a different perspective just to kind of get them out of a rut and seeing things differently.
Yeah, and it helps coming back to full circle a little bit. It helps people to break that misunderstanding that I'm the only one that's going through this, when a friend or a professional can say, actually, you're not. And sometimes it's what I experienced, especially as a friend, as a professional, even sometimes I use a little bit of self-disclosure if it's a nugget that's going to be appropriate and help the client.
For sure.
But as a friend, when somebody shares that, it's not maybe the exact experience because nobody knows exactly how you feel. But when I experienced a similar situation, this is how I felt. And that's really reassuring and helps people break that false belief that they're alone and the only one that's thought or experienced those kinds of emotions. Because they aren't.
I think the emotions themselves make people feel that way, right? Because I feel like anxiety and depression do make you feel very dissociative and kind of closed off to the world and your surroundings and everything like that. So just the feelings themselves will make you feel that way, which will make you feel like you're the only one going through it, I guess.
Right. It's a natural reaction, right? When we're feeling, anxious, afraid, those kinds of feelings, we get into self-protection mode. And again, if there's something genuinely to be afraid of, you want to pull back and take care of yourself and protect, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with us with humans as emotions, and especially I notice us guys are a little bit more stereotypically conditioned. That old saying that big boys don't cry, which is not true. We all have feelings, and we all need to find safe ways to identify and express them in a healthy way. But we tend to pull in, and then we don't find ways to open up and identify those emotions and let them flow so that we can let them go, and in a healthy way, and learn from them and learn ways to manage them. Because that's one of the things that makes us unique from any of the other animals, is that we can feel. Right, we have the deep emotional impact on our lives, the healthy feelings, the ones we like to feel, and the feelings we don't like to feel. But they're still helpful in lots of ways. Some of my most fearful feelings that I went through and learned how to process have become some of my best teachers in my life experience.
I completely agree with that. You just made my heart just like jump. I'm like, yeah. And I look back into my own like relationship issues, career changes, death, grief, things like that. Like, when processed properly and when looked at with, I want to say, clear vision and clarity, those moments were powerful moments of growth and powerful moments of finding out who I am as a person and what I like to be and I guess my place in the world, I guess. That's what I take away from it.
That's a great way to put it. So then when we can start looking at emotions, even those uncomfortable ones that we don't like to feel, if we can open up and look at them in a safe, supportive environment, sometimes it's self-reflection, but sometimes there's just some magic in being able to share them with someone else in a trusting, safe environment, and get some unconditional feedback or, feelings of you're not alone because they've gone through some similar experience or whatever it is. Those feelings are just validated. Then the learning becomes that much more impactful and powerful. Whereas if I'm in withdrawal isolation mode and I'm going round and round and round in my own thoughts and my own feelings, sometimes I don't always pull out the learning nuggets that are become the most powerful in that life experience. So
it definitely helps to vocalize our inner dialogues and emotions to someone else and just to bring them into life.
Yeah. I've always said there's no magic in counseling when I'm in a counseling role and helping somebody. It's really just a guided discussion to help them really trust and bring those things out and have a look at them and examine them and they need to learn and take away, and then making some changes in ways that make sense for them in the process, right? And it's a beautiful process. And that's one of the things that, people say, well, you've been counseling for so many years, and I like the teaching training, but I think I'll always keep my fingers in the one-on-one work with folks, because that's where the
Power
real
comes,
in-depth, deeper heart change happens. And it's a beautiful process when you can walk alongside someone and support them in that process.
I bet. Yeah, I think as a counselor too, it's like a lot of people say that you're fixing them, you're helping them, but you're just facilitating themselves to help themselves. Really, you're just facilitating the transformation in that person. You're just you're being like a mirror in a way. I feel.
Yeah, one of the catchphrases, because I have a wacky sense of humor, is I say I'm just a tour guide. You know, it's your
just
life.
a tour guide. Yeah, I love that. That's so good.
Yeah. The clinical model we use, it's client-centered therapy, which is just fancy words for, it's your journey. We're just guiding you, and I'm using a variety of tools to help, look, learn, be real, and go through a process in that journey, and figure out what the next steps in your journey for yourself are, with whatever concern that you've brought to the table that you want to try and figure out.
I agree. What would your advice be to the general public, anyone that's kind of going through issues, going through pain? What can we do simply in the next like half an hour just to ground ourselves out, center ourselves out, help ourselves with difficult emotions, difficult change in our lives? What would be some maybe key things to help with mental health, to help with difficult emotions?
I always come back to that whole body, mind, spirit as a big concept. So what's something you can do with the body, first of all? If you're experiencing some anxiety, one of the first things I teach people who are experiencing some higher levels of anxiety is how to breathe. The 4 square breathing is one of the most powerful techniques. Works with post-traumatic stress, works with anxiety. So just breathing in through your nose to a 4 count, hold for 4, out through your mouth to a 4 count, hold for 4 if you can. They call it the 4 square breathing.
Yeah.
Or if I've got a guy who's really, who's kind of a little bit more testosterone, I teach him it's the combat breathing. I go, combat? I don't want to learn that breathing stuff. That's well, it's combat breathing. Combat? Oh, right. So part of it's in our language and how we word it. Because it's true. The military teaches their soldiers, male or female, in a stressful situation. If you practice the 4 square breathing or combat breathing, it actually tells the brain to relax. You don't have to stay in fight-flight mode here. You can be calm, even though there might be a threat going on, because you lose your ability to think clearly if you're in fight-flight stress response. That's been well documented. So 4 square breathing helps to lower the anxiety, lower the fight-flight stress response, and get your clear thinking back with whatever you're doing. So that's one of my foundational tools for sure.
That is, I definitely put that into my own practice. I know for sure. It's tough to be sometimes aware of it, because sometimes you forget. But whenever I'm reminded that, hey, like I can feel this tension in my body, I can feel that my heart rate is up, my breath is shallow, my thoughts are sporadic, I'm not thinking clearly. It's almost like okay, like it's that realization of yourself in that moment, and then okay, if I take even 1 minute to breathe, de-stress, find the tension in my body and release it, boom, I can be in a different mindset. I can then move on from there. It's almost like a reset. It's almost like resetting your computer once everything crashes and nothing's working.
Yeah, I love your reset language with the computer analogy, because really that's what it's like, Andrew, is you're doing a quick reset in the moment, right? And it connects the mind to the body by just simply breathing or getting moving. I used to work in pain management with the health authority, and I didn't call it exercise because that was like a 4-letter bad word for lots of folks, right? And especially if you're struggling with chronic pain, there's parts of your body that you can't move because the pain is so strong. What can you move? Let's focus on where we're going. So in these difficult times, especially, the brain is wired to see the negative, and because it's there to protect you, there's some value in it. But then we need to reframe and say, okay, where am I going? I'm going to get moving a little bit, do some deep breathing. What's kind of my next steps? We're creatures of habit. So if we can get a couple of little simple routines, make it ridiculously easy and accessible, then that gets us into a little bit of a positive habit or pattern. And that helps with the brain reset as well. When you do some breathing, you clear your mind, or you get moving. You know, you can't go for a walk and not breathe properly. It forces you to start breathing better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that I guess the second thing I would add to the list of things to kind of again center ourselves, bring ourselves back to reality maybe
Yep.
would be exercise, movement.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna share this. There's like so many good things when we go outside of our houses and go out for a little jog or a little walk even. The natural mood
Yes.
boost, the improved confidence of just distractions, being outside nature, seeing other people around you. I think
Yeah.
that those are powerful things that we sometimes forget about.
For sure. I was just reading some research. They did it with some students in Japan here. It was a little while ago. I was just reading the research a little over a month ago. And
Yep.
they actually took the students who were on fairly high stress level, and they did a stress test with them to see where their stress levels were. Then they took them for a walk in nature through the forest. It was just a little bit of a tour for, I think it was about an hour or so, brought them back, tested their stress levels, and they were significantly lower. Just A, walking, B, being in nature environment, noticing nature, hearing the birds singing, all that kind of stuff. There's something about it that just calms our whole mind and body and spirit and when you get out and change your environment.
I think it just gets you, if you were in a state of maybe inside your inner dialogue or inside your inner state, and you're kind of constantly thinking about things, constantly strategizing, whatever's going on in there, it gives you that time for that just to dissipate and slow down and become more clear.
Yeah.
I believe.
I would say one of the other things that I would add to that is really pay attention and limit the amount of negative environment that's coming at you, whether that's through media or getting caught up in watching. I mean, I've had to watch myself. I mean, I know this stuff, but I've got into The Flash on Netflix lately, and I've restarted and watched, and all of a sudden, 2 and 3 episodes, and I have to, put it down and then just focus on, like, one of the things I do is just listen to some relaxing music. Or I like affirmations is a big one because it helps to reprogram our subconscious, kind of wash in a good way with the healthy, the positive thinking kinds of things. So you find those little things that works and gives us some focus on where we want to be going, how we want to be thinking, whether it's reading a good book or listening. There's so many good free audio affirmation on YouTube. There's lots of great stuff. Kind of find what works for you to give up your brain a positive wash, right? In that kind of a sense. This is so key. It's key anytime for mental wellness. It's critical in these times that we're dealing with, where we've lost a lot of our structure and our social connection and all those kinds of things that we're all going through.
We got to rebuild a structure in a way. Yeah,
create a little bit of a routine. I'm actually enjoying it with COVID-19, my morning routine.
Me too.
It was roughly 45 minutes. I said to my wife, I came up the other day and she's like, you haven't done anything on your laptop or working? Because I've been working at the kitchen lots with some of my work stuff and my laptop. And I ended up doing a 2-hour routine. It just went from some exercise and I listened to a couple affirmation kind of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
My 2020 turned into a 2-hour routine, and I just felt so energized and refreshed. And I was like, wow, this was a positive use of my first 2 hours of my day today. And so, I can't always do that. So I'm trying to use the time in a helpful way. One of my other mentors along the way, he said, we're going to come out of this time. And he said, think ahead 90 days. And I want you to, in 90 days, we're going to be probably through some of the big bumps of this whole COVID-19. Reflect on, what did you do that made it the best of time for you? What did you work on? What did you do that you wanted to do? Think of that way. So you're really using your imagination, to kind of validate where I want to go and what do I want to use this time in a good way for myself. He also says, think of if I just binge on Netflix or whatever else. Nothing wrong with Netflix. I enjoy a good movie or whatever. But again, it's about balance.
All in balance,
right? Just think of the negative. If you just didn't create some structure or get out for a walk or whatever it is you're going to do for yourself, how would you feel? Ugh, right? And then I always like doing the negative first and then ending with a positive. So think about what it's going to be like in 90 days if I just continue to do the not so healthy or healthy behaviors. I don't like that feeling. So what am I going to do? What's some of the things that I do that I enjoy, that I have more time to practice with? And how is that going to feel? Because our feelings motivate us around things that are important for us, and then creating some steps to get them into an action plan and make them start happening in your life.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I definitely agree with you. I notice myself too with my mornings now. It's a much longer process, which is nice. And I'm taking the time to really slow down and um, do things longer. Like go for a 1 hour walk every day, or two
Yeah,
half-an-hour walks. Stretch for 45 minutes a day. I mean,
yeah,
but don't start like that. Start stretching for 5 minutes a day. Just stretch 5 minutes
exactly.
a day, because you can't start with the craziness. You can't
Yeah,
start with a huge amount, because your brain will just be like, no, and you'll quit and you won't get anything done.
exactly.
But do
Begin
these
where
little
you are
things.
at.
Yep.
Begin where you are at, and make it ridiculously simple to achieve. And then that will build the momentum, whether that's 1 minute, 3 minutes in a stretching routine or a walk or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the way we're wired.
Yeah, we need to take it slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that builds that momentum, and it starts to build the habit. Depending on who you study, psychologists say it takes anywhere from 21 to 28 days to build a habit. You know, when I started my movement, exercise, peaceful warrior routine for 3 minutes, after a month or so, I was enjoying, my body was going, okay, where's my 3 minutes, you know? And then was starting to make it into a 10-minute routine or whatever you have time for. But there's still
Mm-hmm.
some days I wake up late, I'm hurried, I got meetings on the go, and I don't have time for a full hour. But I always, 99% of the time, I do that 3 minutes. Most like probably at least 6 days out of the week for sure. But I
Yeah.
had to create that habit in the first month or so of getting into the routine. My
It's
mind would go, oh, I don't feel like it.
that willpower of the
Yeah,
first couple of days, definitely.
yeah, for sure.
I would also say of a thing to kind of add to our list of things that we need to be kind of maybe mindful of, or should be mindful of, especially in these times, but all the time in daily life, would be our sleep,
Yeah,
sleep cycles, and getting enough sleep, getting the proper type of sleep, and waking up at maybe the same times. I know there's a lot of studies that talk about like kind of the hormone releases during sleep,
yeah,
and how that's really plays into our moods and general well-being.
you're right. Uh, Sleep, and we don't have enough time to get into all of it today. But when I'm working with someone, I always start at a baseline of where are they physically around nutrition, water intake, sleep. Those are
Yeah.
some foundations in your in
Yep.
your mental health wellness plan for sure. And there's lots of
Hmm.
good research on sleep patterns and rhythms and how to get them back. And I've done some reading on those areas because lots of times working with folks with that have some significant mental health or substance misuse issues, sleep patterns have really been messed up. So it's a topic we end up. I'm not an expert on it, but I need to be a bit of a generalist in that area to help people, give them
Of
some
course.
ideas on how they get those patterns back in a rhythm, so that
In a
they can,
rhythm,
because
yeah.
the brain recharges. The research I've been reading, the brain actually detoxes and recharges while you're sleeping. And if you're not getting some quality sleep, you need some tools to help you get back into some quality sleep rhythms.
Yeah.
It's a key for sure. First thing I do, one of my first tip of the day, and I actually learned this from Dan Millman when I took his training in California 20 years ago. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I drink a big glass of water.
Yeah. A liter of water.
Because
Yeah.
we lose, you know, the Boy Scouts will teach you that if you're camping in the winter time, you always want to let your air get out of the tent. Otherwise, you'll freeze yourself to death from the own moisture that you let go in your breath while you're sleeping. So we dehydrate while we're sleeping.
For
So
sure.
it's a simple but a very powerful thing. Take a big glass of water before you, the first thing you do when you get up in the morning, and it gets your body rebalanced. If you add a little bit of lemon to it, it adds that much more. So there's lots
Hmm.
of little hacks and tricks like that we can do that are simple and easy things to do that we can that actually improve our quality of life, physically,
Hmm.
mentally, and and
Yeah,
in emotional.
there's a whole list of things that I feel like we need to take responsibility for and be aware of in our daily lives. If we want to live a life that is free from stress, more fulfilling, um, more positive. And I think it's a kind of a responsibility thing, because it's something that we can easily kind of sweep under the rug and not deal with for a time being. But over time, I feel like these bad habits will kind of stack up on each other and grow until to a place where we're like almost like, hey, like what the heck happened? And it's hard for us to get back to these things. So it's, I guess, always being aware of these things, daily things that we need to do to take care of ourselves. Some people call it self-care, some people call it self-love, whatever it might be for you. Like you said, if for different types of people, they might need different words, but like you were saying, like combat training for breath or whatever. We need to find what works for us to make us, better people out there in the world. So whether that's, I guess it's the daily things of breathing, of being aware of our breath, nutrition, sleep, exercise, stretching, reading, new material, having purpose, goals, something to strive towards. And I know that's why I kind of wanted to talk to you with this right now, is because like right now it's really hard for people to have these things of purpose and direction, and because there's so much uncertainty in the air. But I think we just need to reframe and find what we can do right now in the moment.
Exactly. And say, well, what can I, yeah, for sure. And say, what can I do with this time that is useful and productive for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, my wife and I were chatting about it, and she said, a few months ago I was saying, I just need about 2 months off to finish all my little projects around the house.
Yeah.
And she was
saying,
there
you
we were
go.
talking about it at dinner. She was saying, I've got the time. And that was a little reframe, right? At first we were getting a little bit stressed about, the stuff that's going on with lack of work and finances, blah, blah. And those are real issues that we need to, manage as best we can. However, when you reframe, hey, how can I use this time in a way that's useful and valuable for me to learn, to grow? And I was reminded, I always, when I'm working with someone and when I'm doing training, I actually draw the whole person in a circle. And so I have the physical on one quadrant, then I have the mental or the thinking on the second quadrant, then I have the spiritual, social, I kind of combine them. And when I say spiritual, I mean, what gives you life purpose? Who do you hang out with for social connections, fun, that kind of piece of us. And then the other part is the emotions, and we touched on that. So I have the 4, physical, thinking, spiritual, social, and the emotions. And I draw it in a circle for a reason. If you do something positive in one area, it has a positive ripple effect all the way around the circle. If you do something negative in another area, it has a negative ripple effect, larger or smaller, depending on what the action is in those areas. But I like that framework, because we're all human. I mean, I find myself drinking a little bit more pop than I normally do during this time, and so what? And so it went, well, it has, I don't like putting that much sugar in my system, yet I like a good Coke once in a while. So, but I noticed it and I stopped. That's a negative ripple effect on my emotions, and it's a simple little thing like putting too much pop in my body. But being aware of it, noticing, saying, hey, I'm going to have a glass of water and not be drinking a pop every day is because for me that's too much sugar in my ADHD kind of body, and it puts me into hyperdrive, right? And so just having a positive ripple has a positive impact on all, and that's a simple thing like
drinking a domino effect.
Yeah. And so how do we shift it to have that positive domino effect in all areas of our life?
I guess that comes back to what we were talking about before, like all these little pillars of habits that we can get into and things that we can do small to start, 3 minutes at a time, 3 minutes of reading, 3 minutes of stretching, 3 minutes of walking, 3 minutes of breath work. Like if you can just start like that, you'll definitely see results right away. And it's easy.
Sure. And it gets the momentum going, right? Because we are creatures of habit. And so that gets that momentum. And if you tie it into what's important for you, then it has that emotional energy behind it. It ties into your own personal beliefs.
I agree. Mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going.
Yeah. And one of the other things that adds into that, just to reframe it, is thinking about what you're grateful for. I mean, I've always known that that's important. What can you be thankful about in your life? It could be the simple things like, oh, geez, I have really fresh, clean sheets to sleep in, straight through to, I have enough money to pay my bills or a warm roof over my head, whatever it is. But actually, Sean Achor is how you pronounce his name, Achor, and he wrote the book, The Happiness Advantage. And it's one of my go-to books that I recommend for folks, because he talks about how do we be happier in a holistic approach. And I'm just borrowing that from him. he actually did the research behind it, that if you think about what you're grateful for, especially before you go to bed,
Oh yeah.
just, think about 1 or 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for. That actually gets your brain thinking that way, and actually helps your happiness level to come up, your mental
First thing in
health
the morning as
well-being.
well, I find.
Yeah, it's good to do it when you go to sleep and first thing in the morning, because again, it gets back to a full circle we talked about. It sets your day in the beginning,
Set the
but
tone.
also at night, it sets your brain, because you process a lot of stuff and it goes into long-term memories when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
So if you do it first thing when you get up, hey, what am I grateful for? What's my plan for the day? Da, da, da. And when you go to sleep at night, he says it's one of the 5 keys to having a healthier, happier life is thinking of things you're grateful for, thankful for.
I agree. It definitely puts things in the right perspective, and keeps you from complaining and being in lack, maybe.
Yeah. And
For sure.
remember, our default mode with our brain is to be negative, critical, and there's a time and a place for that, right?
Right.
Hey, I got to pay attention to this situation or that situation. This could be unsafe or whatever. But again, we got to be able to, evaluate it and say, how can I then learn from that and move forward in a positive, healthy approach too. Otherwise, we can get caught in the negative thinking, and it becomes, I call it the monkey brain. The brain's always got lots of thoughts and going all over the place. How do we kind of channel and get those thoughts going in a healthy, productive way, rather than let the monkey drive the car?
I agree. I like to say, if we can live a life of responding rather than reacting,
Yeah, that's a good one.
that can be powerful. When we can get away from the emotional reaction, and rather when we have these things come up, we can respond instead of reacting and being caught in them.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And one last thing that was going through my mind is I've worked a lot with guys over the years. I've worked in the men's jail for several years in one of my roles, and us guys struggle typically, not always, a little bit more with some of the processing of the emotions and things like that. An analogy, maybe it's because my dad was an automotive mechanic, but I throw it out to guys this way. Do you, with your car today, if you got some things going wrong with it, you can do a few little things under the hood if you're a little bit mechanically inclined, but do you just get a bigger hammer and start trying to fix it yourself? Or do you take it to a professional and get some advice, some information? And it's the same with our mental wellness. Sure, we can tinker around and fix a few things and take some tips that we've talked about today and improve our mental health and our wellness as we go through the ups and downs of life. But if you're running into some bigger snags and the check engine light has gone on in your life, it's okay to reach out to a professional to get a little bit more information, guidance, support to help you get your car back on the road of life in a healthy way quicker. And when I share it in that way with guys with that analogy, I finally go, hey, that makes sense, because I would never just try and fix everything by myself.
It's a logical way of looking at it. Yeah.
For sure. And I think us guys tend to process typically a little bit more that way. And so it's an analogy that helps us understand that, hey, well, it helps reduce some of the stigma around mental health and those kinds of things, and get the help sooner rather than waiting till the car is blowing smoke and blowing up on the side of the road, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point there to go off of fix it before it's too late.
Yeah,
or
before it blows
fix it fix before it's really expensive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maintain. There you go. I love that, Dwayne.
We call it preventative maintenance with a vehicle, and we can do those preventative maintenance with ourselves too. Some we can do by ourselves. Sometimes we need a little bit more professional support or guidance to help us help ourselves.
That's well put, Dwayne. Well put. You want to keep going for a bit here, Dwayne?
Sure,
what I've been usually doing with these is just take like a quick little intermission, about 35 minutes, 40 minutes in. I'll phone you back, and then we can chat for another 15, 20 minutes or something.
Sure, works.
Does that sound good? Awesome.
Sounds good.
I'll phone you back in around 10 or so, 5 to 10.
Sounds good.
Okay, see you soon. Hey, Dwayne, welcome back.
Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Welcome back, Dwayne. I can hear you.
I don't know why this program always wants you to hit how you want to join the video, so there's no video until you hit the button.
Yeah, it's kind of odd sometimes the way it works, so
I'm still learning Zoom.
Yeah. Have you been doing much like conversations with it? Or been trying to? Or do you usually?
Been trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, just trying to get used to the technology and getting other people used to it. And yeah, people still like to do a phone call, which is okay too, but there's something more when you can do the actual whole video and see people in person.
Oh yeah, it's way better. Awesome. So I figured I have this sheet here. It's common forms of faulty thinking. I think it'd be kind of cool to go over it with you, and if you want to share your thoughts about things, we could discuss a couple things, and yeah,
Sure.
we could chat for another 15, 20 minutes here. It's looking beautiful outside, so I'm thinking I'm gonna go for a walk later. But this has been really good. I really enjoy talking about these kind of things and just discovering more myself too, which is good. And whoever else is watching, hopefully.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation up to this point, for sure.
Awesome.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
Well, you
as
do.
You can tell.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. It's really important, and it's a topic that, like, growing up through school, you know, we never were taught things like this. We were never taught about our emotions and how to deal with things like that. So it's like it's something that's just like it's just coming to the surface in a way.
Yeah. I've always said we need to get back into the schools and teach more life skills kinds of things. Everything from stress management to how to deal with emotions to good problem solving. Doing a little bit more of that kind of stuff, but we really need to bring more of those parts of the education into the system for sure.
I agree. I feel like that's the basis of where anything productive or anything starts. Like any education starts is with that. So I think that's so important. I'm going to share this.
True story. I have a true story sometime, if another time, or if it wicks in later, where we actually work with it. Well, when I was working in Prince Albert, I was working a lot more in the school systems, and we had a grade 8 school class that we had a lot of behavior problems in the school, in this particular class. The teachers didn't even want to go in and teach in there anymore. It was getting so difficult.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we had the educational psychologist come and give us some more ideas because we were running out of ideas. And the bottom line, the Reader's Digest version of the story is she gave us, the psychologist gave us some ideas. And I used what I called TAG, Teen Adventure Group, that a program that I developed that was highly experiential in the learning with high-risk youth. And we brought it into the classroom. And basically it was this. We gave them lots of choices. We said, here's the curriculum. Here's what the teacher needs to teach right now. We would like to take you on a adventure, 2-day adventure to Blue Mountain. We've secured some funding to take you on activity, but right now we can't even trust you to go down the hallway without bullying and bugging and blah, blah, blah. So we were just, what did we do? We created authenticity. We were real. We shared, here's the learning goals. And lots of them are in the grade 8 curriculum around stress management and problem solving and blah, blah, blah. But we want to do it in a way that you actually experience it. So we changed the format a little bit. I worked with the teacher, the vice principal, and myself as the counselor went in. And basically it was revved up life skills. So 20 minutes on a topic, maybe it was trust, and then we'd do an activity such as a trust walk. And then we'd spend a little bit of time debriefing. What was the takeaway lessons? What did you learn? How can you put this in your life? So that was a basic format we used for everything. After 2 months of doing that in the classroom, then they made it, and their behavior was trustworthy enough. We went to Blue Mountain Adventure Camp, and now we were doing more higher risk stuff like zip line and wall climbing and high ropes, low ropes adventure stuff. And you know what? This group they were helpful. They were being safe with each other. We did we really culminated. We did a midnight hike up the Blue Mountain in the dark as a group. So we had to get everybody to the top. It was part of the task, support each other and get back down, because not everybody was physical. Some were somewhere, and it was in the dark, no flashlights. It was a little bit of a mini challenge. About halfway up the hill, one of the guys that was struggling a little bit, he wasn't as physically fit, said, I can't go any further. I can't make it. And one of the guys in the class said, I'll go down and help him, and I'll just make up names to save their anonymity. I'll go help Joe. He went down there, helped him to the top. Long story short, we got back down. We finished the hike together. We're sitting around the campfire debriefing. And Mike says, who had been helped up the hill, he says, what I learned today is, I'll call the other guy Fred. Fred isn't a bully. Fred, you used to bully me all the time in the classroom, and today you came down the hill and you helped me up the top. And my grandma said to stay away from you. And when you're being a bully, that's true. But today you showed you could be a friend and supported me in helping me get up the hill. And that's the most powerful lesson I took away. Well, there's tears in my eyes and the vice principal's eyes, and because that was the power of the lesson in debriefing the take. We didn't even realize, we knew the other guy had done a little bit of bullying, but we didn't realize to the level until we brought that experiential activity full circle and they shared their life lesson out of it in the takeaway.
That's the
And
key.
he said, yeah, the takeaway was that, you can be a friend, you can change, and you were helpful and supportive today, and you haven't always been, and thank you for that. And so it really created a deeper level of connecting and support and trusting in that classroom. Just to give you some numbers, because data is always important. In the beginning, the vice principal said that class was accounting for 68% of his discipline time. One class, 68% of his time was used in dealing with discipline issues in that classroom. We finished this mountain, the last part of this tag group, about the first part of June. All the students are gone. It's the end of June. Us teachers and counselors are still in the school. And Mr. Lockinger, that was the vice principal, came. He's almost like a kid running down the hall. He said, Dwayne. I said, what are you so excited about? I just printed my stats for the month of June. That grade 8 class, 0 behavior problems.
Zero.
Went from 68% 4 months earlier to 0. All we did was we did what we're talking about today, but we did a revved up life experience teen adventure group to enhance those concepts and help them apply them in an experiential learning model and change the classroom upside down from not learning totally dysfunctional to the other side of the coin.
Yeah, the power of putting things into practice, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, getting kids or whoever to understand for themselves what's important.
Yeah, and how to apply those in a way to support one another in the change process in our wellness journey, right? To come back to what we were talking about earlier.
Beautiful. It's a good story, Dwayne. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was powerful for all of us, for sure.
Awesome. So I pulled this off the internet. Unhelpful thinking styles. So I think this is a really good PDF. I'm actually gonna print this out, put it in my room or something. It's a whole list here. We're gonna go through just 2 at a time. There's a whole list of them here.
Yeah.
I'll read them out here. Unhelpful thinking styles. All or nothing thinking, sometimes called black and white thinking. If I'm not perfect, I have failed. Either I do it right or not at all. Generalizing. Everything is always rubbish. Nothing good ever happens. Seeing a pattern based upon a single event, or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw.
Yeah.
I think those are very common ones. I notice in myself.
Yeah.
For sure.
And what I always like to add to these is, okay, how can I shift that? If I find myself in all or nothing thinking, what's some ways that I can reframe that so that when I see it, I can shift it into more helpful thinking?
So I guess in that case, all or nothing thinking is, hey, there's always 2 sides to things. It's not so black and white, just the opposite of what it's saying there, basically. And then generalizing would be like, I need to be aware when I'm overgeneralizing. Realize that a single event doesn't have to draw a conclusion about my whole life.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's almost just the opposite of these things, really.
Yeah. One of the things I use in the all or nothing thinking is really helping people remember that we all make mistakes, and mistakes are part of the learning process. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And if we can reframe it into, I made a mistake, I am not a mistake.
Yeah.
And in fact, making mistakes is how I learn. So what's the lesson here? So that reframes us out of that black and white kind of thinking that can really suck our life energy and get us into a negative funk.
For myself, I've learned to celebrate mistakes and be like, damn, I'm moving forward. I'm taking action. I'm making mistakes. I mean, this is good. This is, as long as I can take these mistakes and then, okay, I'd be aware of it, respond to the mistake, not react to this mistake, then I
Yeah.
can move forward and learn from those things. And the more mistakes I can make, the better I can be.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
think it
almost
was
like
Tony Robbins.
yeah.
I was going to say, I think it was Tony Robbins. I mean, I've listened to so many guys, and Tony Robbins is one of my mentors. He says, fail forward. And I
Yeah.
like that. Hey, fail forward. Yeah, because you're learning from your mistakes. We're all going to make some failures, and how do we take the life lesson and move forward?
We're all going to make so many failures. Yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah.
We'll just keep going, and whatever comes to mind comes to mind. This is good.
Sure.
Mental filter, only paying attention to certain types of evidence, noticing our failures, but not seeing our successes. I feel like that's a huge thing. Like
Yeah.
it's like not seeing the whole picture of things and just seeing maybe only clinging onto these little negatives because they support how we feel about ourselves or whatever. Can be damaging. I do that sometimes myself. Disqualifying the positive, discounting the good things that have happened or that you have done for some reason or another. That doesn't count.
Yeah. One of the things sometimes, especially working with people with more significant mental health and substance abuse to dependence issues, is they really have a low self-esteem, and that they're struggling to rebuild lots of times, and lots of them have had pain or trauma from the past. And so a simple thing is, when there's a positive and somebody even says the positive, they'll dismiss it or discount it. It's just teaching them to say thank you.
Yeah.
And receive it in some way. And sometimes that baby step is a big step for somebody who's experienced lots of pain and shame and trauma, just to accept and allow that positive in by just saying thank you. Their emotions will be going, oh, but da 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 da, you know, and that's okay. Just let the emotions, you know, do their little monkey dance. That's fine. You are not your emotions. They're just another signal part of the whole person. Just say thank you and appreciate. Sometimes I've had to, you know, help them write down what's something I do well. Notice those positive things, right? And break that tunnel vision that can happen.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely find myself sometimes even like that. With
I can
people
happen with the rest of us.
that people complimenting you, it's like, nah, I could have done better, or that's not good enough. I'm not, that's not good enough. There's better people that do it better or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind and realize when we're doing that, and not berate ourselves and allow ourselves to take compliments.
Yeah.
Jumping to conclusion. There are two types of jumping to conclusions: mind reading, imagining we know what others are thinking. Jumping to conclusion, and fortune telling, predicting the future. Magnification, catastrophizing, I can't really say that. Catastrophizing and minimization, blowing things out of proportion, or inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important. I guess all comes back to kind of the mental filter and not seeing reality as it is, but rather kind of making up a whole narration or story inside of our heads.
Yeah. And in fact, I was reading another article, doing some research for another project I'm working on not too long ago, and they actually said that I forget the percentage amount, so don't quote me on this, but it was quite high. It was like 30 or 40% of our memories actually aren't even based in facts. So things that we remember way back when, because we make up a bit of that story sometimes, and some of us are better at that than others, and what was the key facts. But when somebody's caught up in what you just described there in the article, I just get them back to, okay, what was the key facts? What's really going on? How do we get anchored right now in today on what we know and what we don't know? And rather than jumping to conclusions, right? So it gets us anchored back into the here and now. And sometimes getting some feedback from a trusted friend that knows you a little bit more can be a great way to help to bring some reality to that, you know, catastrophizing kind of thinking, or you know, and we each have our own reality. You know, you and I may go through the exact same experience, and you see one piece of it and I see another piece of it. It's not that yours is right and mine's wrong or vice versa. It's just that they're different perspectives and we remember them a little bit different. And that's where the sharing what you liked, what you learned, gives you a fuller perspective and a fuller learning of whatever it is you're experiencing.
Yeah, I think we gotta, whenever we have like a traumatic event happen in our life, I think it's very, very easy to take that traumatic event and then build a whole narration behind it where most of it isn't true. And most of it's overgeneralization, most of it's jumping to conclusions, a lot of it's filtered, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralizing. It's it's taking this moment in our lives and making and blowing it up. We like to have like fireworks with it or something. I'm not sure why, but it definitely happens a lot.
It definitely does, and it becomes quite complicated because we are, interesting and amazing human beings. But quite a few years ago in the counseling field, they actually put a label to it called false memory syndrome, where people who experienced the trauma. The trauma was real, but some of the details around what and who and how it happened wasn't as accurate because of the false memory syndrome that they discovered. And that's when they actually started retraining, especially police officers who were interviewing folks from an incident where there was potential charges. They had to really reframe and pay attention to how they were interviewing, because they could inadvertently create false memory syndrome just in the way they phrased their questions. So it really showed us how complicated we are and how we need to be wise in that area from a professional level, and from the other side, just in our own way, examine our own ways we might be adding to the story. That was my perception, but is it all the facts? That kind of an idea. Really expand our understanding of what's going on, and realizing our perception is our reality, but it may not be the full reality of the situation.
Yeah, it's definitely being aware of our mental process and aware of what's going on inside there and why these thoughts are leading to one another, and looking at the why of them, I guess, which is it's a crazy process. And I guess what helps with that is meditating, the breathing, the slowing down, the looking, the searching, the self-reflecting. Yeah. And what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, have you ever noticed, and I forget there's a fancy term and maybe it'll come to me, but have you ever noticed where the brain is actually quite single focused? And an example is when I was looking to buy a truck, I ended up, I was looking at different trucks, a variety of things. I ended up buying a Dodge Red Ram. And I thought I was the only one in the world that had a red Dodge Ram truck until after I bought it. And then I'm like, I didn't realize there was so many red Ram Dodge trucks on the road. So our brain, what's important, it tends to focus on certain things, right? And that could be a good thing, right? When we need to be focused on something in particular. So it can be positive, but it can also be negative if we get narrow-minded and don't stop and say, hey, all those red Dodge trucks were on the road before I ever bought one. It's just now that I'm a little bit more focused on it because it's of value and of interest to me because I own one now. And that can happen in any area of our life. So it's just being aware of that and broadening our focus when we need to, and using that narrow focus when it's of help for us, right?
I agree. That's very well put, Dwayne. Last couple things on this unhelpful thinking styles list. Emotional reasoning, assuming that because we feel a certain way, what we think must be true. I feel embarrassed, so I must be an idiot. I think that goes with the reacting instead of responding to emotion. Using critical words like should, must, or ought can make us feel guilty or like we have already failed. If we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. Labeling, assign labels to ourselves or other people. I'm a loser. I'm completely useless. They are such an idiot. Labeling. That's definitely, we do that lots.
Yeah, because it creates that narrow focus again of a situation or a person or whatever with label.
Yeah, I think it also kind of takes the responsibility off ourselves if we can. We don't have to change if we just label it. I'm a loser. I'm completely useless.
Right.
They're the problem. It kind of gives us a false sense of security in a way.
Yeah, and prevents us from reflecting and looking at the full situation.
Yeah. And last one, personalization. This is my fault. Blaming yourself or taking responsibility for something that wasn't completely your fault. Conversely, blaming other people for something that was your fault. Yeah, this is a really good list that I thought it was kind of good.
It is, and a couple of quick hacks I would share around there is the feelings one. Here's one of the things that if I've said this, if I had a loony for every time I said this, I'd probably be retired already, is that feelings aren't good or bad, right or wrong. They're just feelings. They're signals. And they're not 100% accurate all the time, but they're real for you, and but just treat them as a, what's this feeling trying to tell me? So more of a Inspector Clouseau kind of an approach. It's interesting that I'm feeling this way. And that helps us to slow down and not react like you were talking earlier. And it gets us away from that good, bad, right, wrong kinds of thinking around our emotions.
Right.
Sometimes feelings make sense, sometimes they don't. That's okay. They're just a signal. What's this about? And so that helps. And it reminds us that we aren't just our feelings, we're the other pieces of the whole person. But they can be, our intuitive feeling part can also be a really key signal that can help give us pieces of information, but it isn't the whole story at the end of the day.
That's the truth, eh? They're a tool. Emotions are a tool, not the whole thing.
Yeah, so a tool is a good way to put it. But we need to accept them, because lots of times, I'm just going to ignore the things. No, they're not good or bad, right? They're a signal. Something's going on. It's kind of like the warning lights come on the dash of the car again. What's this about? Do I need to pull over and open the hood, or can I get home and tinker and adjust this myself in the garage when I get home, or do I need to take it to the mechanic? It makes us stop and really validate those emotions and reflect on them, on what they're trying to teach us or tell us here. And sometimes we don't know. Sometimes I don't know. I don't know what it's about, so I'll just leave it over there. And if I'm meant to know, I'll meant to know. And again, notice the thinking process I'm using so that it helps us from falling into those negative traps that you've just outlined in that document, which is a good kind of an overall document.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's really good, Dwayne. I'm glad we kind of went over all these things. It's good information to keep in mind, especially during these times of uncertainty and where people are more prone to be in fear and more prone to be in maybe their heads thinking about things and worrying.
And that's when that whole catastrophizing and those kind, when we're feeling fear, that's often one that happens. So again, combining the fear with just breathing through it. Hey, what am I fearful about? What's the practical things I can do? Doing some what I call thought stopping in your own head. If the monkeys are going around and the squirrel cage is going on, oh my God, how am I going to face this? So, you just, okay, take a minute here. Yeah, I'm a bit scared and understandably so, because there's some real practical things going on. But what can I do in the moment? How can I, it isn't the end of the world. What can I do in the now to handle things and manage things as best I can? Because the catastrophic types of thoughts, I always ask myself, how is this helping me to solve things or feel better? It isn't. Okay, well, what do I want to do that helps me to get grounded more and look at a real life practical situation that I may need to find some solutions to, or I may be able to say, hey, I've done the best I can do right now, and the rest I'll just have to take day by day because I can't solve it all today.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one when we're feeling fear. But again, grounding and moving through the fear is an important part of it for sure.
Yeah. I guess the key points that I would take away from this discussion is to slow down, respond, not react to what you're feeling, accept your emotions as they're coming. Ask yourself what you can do. What's the next best thing that you can do to alleviate your concerns, alleviate your worry? What's in your control at this moment?
Yeah, and focus on what you can control.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of leave.
If your car of life slides into the ditch, using the car and mechanic analogy, it's okay to call a tow truck.
Yeah. Get some help. Talk about your feelings. You're not crazy. You're having a human experience. This is more than natural.
Exactly. Yes. Well put.
When a negative thought enters your mind, think 3 positive ones. Train yourself to flip the script.
That is a good challenge. That's a well put for sure. How can you flip the script? I like that wording.
How can you flip the script, Dwayne? Every day, like I said, but like what we talked about, those small things. Self-help, self-care, love yourself, do things that are good for you, eat well, sleep well, talk to people, communicate your emotions, communicate your feelings, your worries, your fears. Let it be real to you. Don't hide beneath, don't sweep things under the rug. They'll still be there. Deal with them. Yeah.
And it reminds me of one more thing to add to that. Sometimes just jotting them down. In fact, I was doing a call with a client this morning, dealing with some negative thinking stuff. And reminded them, write those down and write the positive reframe on the other side. And there's some real good research around writing it out for lots of people helps to anchor it in the brain. And then you've got a cheat sheet when you get caught up in the negative thinking. It's kind of like the snowball going downhill. The oh my God thinking, as I call it. You go, wait a minute, here's the oh my God thinking, but here's my positive reframe. It gets you anchored back into what you need to be thinking or approaching it in a more healthy, hopeful, balanced way.
Yeah, have yourself a little cheat sheet. I like that. Create yourself a cheat sheet of phrases, quotes, whatever it might be for you to realize what's happening, what's going on.
Yeah, not only are we visual learners, lots of us, what helps us that way, but the writing in itself and the kinesthetic part helps to really deepen the learning and the lesson and whatever we're changing.
Agreed.
It's very, very powerful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for this, Dwayne. This has been really, really empowering, inspiring, enlightening. I'm ready to tackle the day now. It's great.
Right on. That's a good sign.
It is. Sure. I mean, all these podcasts have been kind of like that. We've all been talking about people's emotions and feelings and trying to find order in the chaos and mental health and self-care and things we can do right now in our control. So that's a key thing, especially when we're feeling a little bit out of control in some areas of our life. Get focused back on what you can control and what has meaning for you. Agreed. Awesome, Dwayne. Sure. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for sharing your insight. It was it's nice to have someone that has spent so many years doing this. So it's good to have that expertise and different ways of looking at things for sure. Yeah, well, I appreciate the call. It was great chatting with you. And if there's another topic you want to go a little deeper in on sometime, feel free. We'll do it again sometime. Awesome. Yeah, I would love that, Dwayne. Thank you. Sounds good.